Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to begin by wishing everybody who's watching this a happy Mother's Day, even if you're not a mom. Think of your mom, love your mom, remember your mom. And today we are welcoming Jayne Krentz, but today we're welcoming her as Amanda Quick, a woman of split personality, right?
I've learned to live with it.
You remind me of Ruth Rendell, or in fact the late Barbara Mertz, who wrote as Elizabeth Peters and also as Barbara Michaels.
Yes, I got to go to one of her signings years ago. That was very exciting.
She was great. She was once mistaken for me at a conference in Seattle,
Oh,
and people came up and congratulated me on my fabulous novels. And after a few minutes, she got so angry, she stepped in front of me and she said, "I own a fantastic bookstore in Scottsdale, Arizona."
oh my God, that's hilarious.
It is hilarious. So today, our interviewer is going to be John Charles of the Poison Pen staff. So I'm going to slide out of this chair, hopefully not falling on the floor, and John will slide in, and off we go. Just
Hello,
adjust
Jayne.
the camera if you need.
John, it's so good to see you. It's been a while.
I know, it seems like it's been so long. We love having you come to the bookstore, but
Oh,
we're
I
delighted
love
that
it.
we can still talk to you this way. So my first question for you was tell us a little bit about yourself before you became a writer.
Ah, well, you know about my secret past as a librarian, right? Several years as a librarian, actually, mostly in academic and corporate libraries. And then one very memorable year as a grade school librarian, which was memorable in that I realized that was probably not my calling. I came away from that year with an enormous respect for real teachers.
Yes.
Let me tell you, it's a gift, it's a talent, and as far as I'm concerned, we should pay them all CEO salaries and give them whatever they want.
That's true.
We need them. We need them.
So what prompted you to start your writing career?
I think the same thing that prompts a lot of authors, which is I was reading in certain genres and I loved this. I loved the books that I loved, and it wasn't that I ever thought that I could write better than Dick Francis or Barbara Michaels. It wasn't that kind of feeling. It was just there came a time when I wanted to tell the story my way. I wanted my jokes, my my kind of suspense, my kind of dialogue, and I just wanted that. I wanted to end it my way, and after a while, that became a compulsion. It kind of like an addiction. I couldn't, even though it took me 6 years to sell a book, I couldn't stop the writing.
Now, when you started writing, that's kind of the origin story behind your three names, Jayne Krentz, Jane Castle, and Amanda Quick, because you wrote for different publishers. Can you tell us a little bit about how that evolved?
Okay, well, first of all, I would like to say up front that it was not the plan at the start. I did not intend to wind up with three names, or more, actually.
Yeah.
Look back at my forwarded career. And my one writing tip of the day for if there's anybody out there in the audience who is considering becoming an author and using different names for different subgenres, don't go there. Don't do it. It's impossible to keep everybody knowing all of your names, and you will not attract all three audiences. There will be some people who will read you across all three names, assuming they find you under all three names. Promoting all three names is next to impossible to do it equally, and people tend to prefer me in one fictional landscape or the other. I have lots of readers who will only read me as Amanda Quick, which is where I am today,
Yeah.
as Amanda Quick. For the historicals, they just love that historical landscape.
Since you are here as Amanda Quick, tell us a little bit about your latest book, Close Up.
Okay, it's set in 1930s California, and I should make it clear that my California is the mythical California. This is the California of the movies. This is the California of Hollywood glam and everybody reinventing themselves and inventing the future while they are at it. It's the California of the beautiful beaches and the sparkling water and the glorious sunsets and the dark side, the shadows that were all that are always underneath. So um, it's it's kind of a storybook California, but I'm because of my own history as a history major.
Yeah.
I do care about the small details, and the small details are where most of my plot points come from. Like the automobiles, the Cord automobile was a fascinating car, and I gave that to one of my heroes. Um, the development of radar came into it, and who knew the 1930s were so big on robots?
Yes.
It was, there's so much plot material there to work with, but I'm having a blast.
Now, Close Up is part of your Burning Cove series. Can you tell us a little bit about that landscape, that world?
Well, it's very loosely, the town of Burning Cove is very loosely, and I want to emphasize loosely based on Santa Barbara. And if you know Santa Barbara, it's like an instant picture, with of that Spanish colonial revival look in California that was so classic for the 1930s. And it's a town, I didn't want to do it the stories set in Los Angeles per se, because that was a company town.
Yeah.
In a sense. The studios ran the town, and I needed my own figures of power, my own people who had power within their community. And so I needed to move them out of LA in a sense, because in LA everybody was bought and paid for by the studios. So I wanted my own gangsters and my own bad guys and my own good guys. So that was why I moved it out. But it has the advantage of being one of those places, as Palm Springs eventually became, and as Santa Barbara was, and is a playground for the people from Hollywood, as well as a few gangsters and people from back east who are vacationing, wealthy people, socialites. They came for the glamour, they came for the seaside, they came for kind of rub shoulders with the
Celebrities.
the fame. Yeah, the celebrities. Yeah.
Vivian Brassiere, your heroine, is a photojournalist. She takes crime scene photos by day and headshots, but she really wants to be an artistic photographer. You talk in the book a lot about the two different schools of art photography or photography at the time. Can you kind of expand on that and explain that to us?
Well, Vivian is confronting a problem that has existed for photographers since the invention of the camera, which is whether or not the photos should be considered art.
Okay.
And if they are considered art, is it high art or is it just commercial art? And it's always been a line that photographers have walked. The kind of art that wants to be taken seriously as high art is called pictorialism. And it just said right from the word, you know what it means. It means art that looks like a painting, art that has the feel of a real old master or a modern painting, but it's not about a slice of reality. It's about an aesthetic that speaks to to whatever the artist was trying to convey, but it's timeless. It's not a piece of history, so to speak. And modernism was the newer school, and modernism was based on people who are photographers who wanted to convey a slice of reality. And it's all about sharp lines and strong definitions. Pictures in the pictorialism school are heavily manipulated in the printing process, sort of like master photoshopping, if you will. But in the world of modernism, you're trying to take a snapshot of history that will be a record of that piece of history. So there's a problem right from the get-go, because they're trying to do there's two different goals involved. Anyhow, she wants to be taken seriously as an artist, but it's tough to break into that world, so she's making her living, she's paying the bills with the crime scene photography of the headshots of the aspiring actors and the occasional nude photo for the
artistic.
artistic photos from the men who worked out on Muscle Beach. So
Now it's Vivian's training, though, her artistic background, that helps her spot something when she's doing her crime scene photos.
yes.
And that's kind of leads to the whole evolution of the plot. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, what she sees in the photos at a series, she's called to photograph a series of murders that are very staged looking, and they know they're hunting a weird serial killer, but they don't have a clue about how to find him. And she provides the clue to the police that helps them find the killer. But in the process, she puts herself at the top of an assassin's hit list. No good deed.
Fortunately, she has some help from a private investigator. Tell us a little bit about Nick.
Okay, Nick is a psychic investigator, and the psychic side of his life or the psychic side of his nature has really messed up his life in a lot of ways. Luckily, he's got a really cool dog. So
There you go.
he's not alone in the world. He's got a dog. But his nightmares and his dreams and his way of solving crimes has been hard on him emotionally, and it's cost him a marriage, and it's ended up with an annulment, which at the time was just a hideous thing to do and horrifying to do. And he's got a world established for himself that's kind of under his control, and he wants to keep it that way. But Vivian Brassiere is an artist, and she's kind of wild, and she's almost, she's his opposite in so many ways. But she understands him like nobody else does, because she understands that he sees the world in a way like she sees the world, which is with an artistic eye, spotting the details that other people will not see. So make a good couple.
As someone who's written a number of different connected books, they're kind of series, but you don't have to read them in order. What are some of the challenges about that as an author? Do you decide in advance? Does it just evolve? Do you have to go backtrack and kind of rewrite things? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, all of the above.
Yeah.
I didn't ever. Most books don't start out as intending to be a series. Well, for me, I don't start a book thinking this will make a series, but at some point, midway through the story, I'll think, gee, I could have a series here. I'd like to work with some of these elements again. So my series have been a bit sloppy in the way they've evolved, and I'm careful because of that to make sure that each book stands alone, because I don't want to be too tied to the previous book or to the book I have to write next. I want to leave myself a lot of freedom to play with my characters in the next book. So the series elements are usually the underlying vibe. For example, I love working with a psychic vibe. So that started the Arcane Society books that I write under my Krentz name, Jayne Krentz. And if you'll notice, there's a psychic vibe creeping into these new Amanda Quicks that are set in California, because it fits. It fits my characters, and it gives me a way. It gives me a way to add something extra to the story, and it frees me as a writer. I don't have to worry about adhering to all the police procedural rules. I've got different ways of solving the crime, and that's more fun for me as a writer, so I don't have to call the police to get the DNA and all that kind of stuff.
There you go. The concept of a core story has always played an important role in your books. For those of us that don't know about this, can you explain that and kind of tie it into how you write, what you write?
I think every author has a core story, and I want to emphasize that doesn't just mean that they just always write mystery, or they always write romance, or they always write science fiction. That's not what I'm talking about. I think your core story is defined by the kinds of themes and the kinds of conflicts and the kinds of emotions that you as an author are drawn to work with. And most of the authors I know are drawn to work with the same ones over and over again. And they spend their careers exploring their core story. So no matter what it leaves them lots of freedom for the fictional landscape. It leaves them lots of freedom for plots. But if you look at an author's work underneath it, it seems to me that 9 times out of 10, most authors are returning to certain kinds of themes and conflicts and emotions, certain kinds of family drama that just pull them. They pull their power from that, and that's how the power gets on the page. That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay. Let's switch gears a little bit. One thing I like to hear from authors who are visiting us either in person or electronically is what they've read that they've absolutely loved and want to share with other readers. So what are some of the books that you want to tell readers about, get in their radar?
Okay. I love anything by Christina Dodd. She does a fabulous combination of suspense and, of all things, humor, which is tricky to put into suspense, and family drama. Her last book was Strangers She Knows, and I think the title sort of sets up the idea of the kind of book she writes. I am really excited because my friend Susan Elizabeth Phillips has a new book coming out in June, I think, right?
Yes.
Dance Away With Me. And Susan Elizabeth Phillips pretty much invented the romantic comedy as we know it today, I think. But there's a lot of depth. Rom-com makes it almost too light sounding. The books are much deeper than that because, like Christina and other authors I enjoy, there's a lot of family drama. The family is always at the core of her stories and the relationships, and she's just very good with dialogue. I'm a huge fan of the Veronica Speedwell series by Deanna Rayburn. And that whole kind of, what to me is sort of a new genre of the historical lady sleuth. It feels like it's kind of welled up out of nowhere. It's not that we haven't had historical lady sleuths in the past, like Amelia Peabody and stuff like that, but for a newer generation, it feels like it's being reinvented by authors like Sherry Thomas and who writes the Lady Sherlock series and Deanna Rayburn. And so, what are you reading? What's going on your end? You see the books before I do.
Well, I know there's one book that we both loved and enjoyed called The Woman in the Mirror by Rebecca James. Kind of a modern take on the classic Gothic. Two storylines, 1940s, late 1940s, a woman takes a governess job at an isolated Cornish estate, and then present day, a woman finds out she's inherited that same estate. What I loved about it, and I would love to hear what you think about it, is just how it captures like those wonderful stories that Victoria Holt and Phyllis A. Whitney used to write, the hint of the supernatural. You can't tell whether it's real or not. And the stories, the danger, the setting, all those things I think are really strong in this book. And we do still have copies of The Poison Pen. I know you've made a plug for it.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I thought it was. I thought it was a modern Gothic. I think that is and I always feel like subgenres and genres never go away. They just get reinvented for each new generation. And I feel that Tess Garrison's latest book, Shape of Night, and Woman in the Mirror are two examples of that new Gothic that we're seeing. Because the core Gothic story is always going to be with us, and it's so powerful. It's never going to go away, but it does need to be freshened up like any other subgenre or genre, and those two books are doing it for me. I really enjoyed both of them. They kept me turning the pages, and that's what matters.
What you want as a reader. Well, I'll push two more just because they're new authors. One is a debut by Martha Waters called To Have and to Hoax. It's a Regency historical, like you used to write. Husband and wife are very happy. They've been married for a year, and gradually the bloom goes off their marriage. By 5 years now, they're not talking to each other, basically. She discovers her husband may have been injured in a riding accident, rushes to go see what she can do to help him, discovers the reports of his injuries were greatly exaggerated. He isn't that thrilled to see her, so she decides to play turnabout on him and creates this scenario where she has consumption. I mean, it sounds fraught with drama, but it's very humorous, very funny. That light touch that a lot of authors have in the period. She is a brand new author. I feel so sympathetic to authors that have to put their books out now because a lot of their channels to distribute, to publicize, are being shut down to them. So if you're looking for something fun to read, that's one that I would definitely recommend. And the other one that I think you might like if you've not read yet, Jayne, is called Beach Read by Emily Henry. It's a first adult novel by a YA author. The premise is a woman goes to her late father's home in Michigan, kind of a beach home there, because she's a writer. She's been blocked for 15 months. She has to deliver a manuscript. She figures she'll go there, just isolate herself, pound out the book, get it done by the end of the summer. She discovers her next door neighbor is her hated literary rival from college. Yes, that happens all the time.
That's great.
He has written one book which falls into the Oprah Winfrey book club kind of category of fiction, and he's always had this snobbish attitude to what the heroine, the protagonist, writes, which is romantic comedies. So it sets up that dichotomy between those two styles of books, what readers want. It's very light, very funny, very humorous. It's just a good book to take you away this summer, so it's perfectly titled Beach Read by Emily Henry.
I will look for it. That sounds like a great setup. It really does. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, let's get back. Rumor has it that there may be another Jayne Castle book in the works. Can you expand on that, or do you want to deny any knowledge of it?
I've committed to it now, so there will be another Dust Bunny book. It's probably going to be all I'm ever known for. She wrote the Dust Bunny books.
Yes.
I have this vision. It'll be the Wikipedia thing. Well, she wrote the Dust Bunny books. This the old saying in show business is you never go on after a kid or a dog.
Yeah.
Or a dust bunny. I've come to believe it's true. They just take over the stories, and that's all the readers want is give me more of the animal. But they're a lot of fun. The dust, for those who don't know about the stories, my Jayne Castle world is set in the future on another planet, and the characters are all human, but the side characters like the animals and things are all local to the planet, so they're a little odd. And the Dust Bunnies are one of them.
Now, as Jayne Krentz, you've started a new series this last January, and you're going to continue that world. Can you tell us about your Krentz books and what we can expect?
Yes. Okay, so the first book in a new trilogy, which I'm calling the Fog Lake trilogy. That's Fog with 2 G's, by the way. I had to make it somehow different. It was The Vanishing, which came out a few months ago. And the next book will be out in January, book 2. This one I actually did plan ahead and decide that it would be a trilogy. And the next one is called All the Colors of Night. That's out in January. And the third one hasn't got a title yet. It's way far off. But the whole series is set up with the concept of this town, Fog Lake, a little kind of a hippie mountain town back in the 60s, 1960s, the other century, that was the unwitting victim of a humongous government paranormal experiment that went badly awry. There was a huge explosion in the hidden cave, the hidden laboratories in the caves. A fog covered the town for 2 days, and when the fog lifted and the people woke up, they were different. And now, 3 generations later, in the contemporary world, their descendants are different in that they all have some kind of a paranormal. They see auras, they have visions, they have trouble adapting to the modern world, et cetera, et cetera. So the storyline that overarches the whole thing is what was this secret paranormal project, what was discovered, and what was quietly unleashed on the country without anybody knowing. And the psychic monsters and things that are the result of this experiment are out there. And so are our good guys who all have some kind of psychic power. So I'm having a lot of fun with it because I always love playing with the psychic vibe.
We get a lot of people that come into the bookstore, and I'm sure you get the same number of people at your events that want to write a book. What's the first piece of advice you would give to an aspiring writer that you've learned the hard way?
I think now the best advice would probably be join a good writers organization. You need the information. You need the hard data about the business because right now it's an especially tough. It's never been an easy business, but it is, as you noted, going in really hard right now. And although there are new options like self-publishing and small presses that were not out there years ago, there's complications there too. So I would say educate yourself by joining a good writers group. And if you have trouble locating one, go to your local public library or contact the public library. They always know what writers groups are operating in the area. Start there. Then I think the next step is to figure out what it is you're born to write and identify your core story, if you will. And then once you have a sense of that core story, then you can hone it, you can sharpen it, you can because in popular fiction, subtle is not what you're after. Popular fiction is all about excitement and emotion and intensity, and nothing has ever changed in terms of what the demands of popular fiction are from Shakespeare or anybody else. You're going for a strong sense of emotion and intensity, but I think it's important to find your space, your place, and your core story. You can write forever without knowing that core story because it's so intuitive, but the more you know about it, the more you're going to be able to shape it for the market, the more you're going to be able to sell it. That's my feeling on that.
Since so many people have been sheltering at home, how are you keeping yourself busy, if you don't mind sharing with us? Have you taken up a new hobby, or is there?
Writing. I am doing more reading. That's the good side of that, is I am getting more reading in. And writing has always been my passion and my job and my hobby. And when I'm not doing that, I'm probably cooking. One of the downsides of sheltering at home here in Seattle, where things are pretty strict, right? Still very strict, and we've been pretty strict for over 2 months now, is that the refrigerator is right there. Steps away. And mealtime has taken on, not that it wasn't always important to me, but it has taken on breakfast, lunch, and dinner are major events now.
Before we wrap up, let us know what's coming next for you as an author. I think you
Next
touched
up
yeah.
will be the sequel, or the second book of that trilogy, the Fog Lake trilogy, and it's All the Colors of Night, and that's under my Jayne Krentz name. And that's what's actually going to be out next. But what I'm actually writing at this moment is the next book in the Burning Cove series, which will feature the sister of Vivian Brassiere. This book, yeah.
The one who dumps her fiance or something like that.
Yeah. She's decided to cut the cord. No longer she's going to be the good girl in the family. She's going to go wild.
There you go. That sounds fun. Well, thank you so much, Jayne. We've loved having you, even if it's just across the electronic airwaves. Please do keep in touch with us about what's coming next, and we hope one day to welcome you back to the Voice and Pen.
I can't wait to come back. Thank you so much for the invitation. And thanks for making this available. I really appreciate the chance to talk to you again.
Thank you, Jayne.